Hi, this is Kathy Vick, Deeply Awake, and I started out wanting to talk about trees. I'm inspired by the natural beauty that my son gave me today. Look. Ooh. And they all smell differently. And they're all so pretty. So, I did a little riff on trees and stuff, but I think they deserve a little bit more focus than I'm able to provide them today. And so I would like to talk about water just for a little bit. Water, there's no way I can do 6 minutes on water. More like 6 days. Oh my God. Water is where it's at. But let's just consider a river stream up in the mountains, perhaps overlooking the stream, your eating meal, and appreciating this beautiful glistening thing that's babbling at you while you munch on your burger and talk to friends. Somehow we all know instinctively that when we see water in a little moving, natural environment, like a creek or that kind of thing, we all know somehow that this is going to the ocean. It's in children's books, it's understood. But have you considered what that means? If I cut my finger, it will bleed, and you'll see a little river of blood. And before it does what is clotting thing, you just see red. Your reminder that there is a water system in you, a liquid system in you that circulates and nourishes everything. Water is lyrical in that, wow, there's just so much. A drop of water that's its own being, its own raison d'etre, with surface tension and molecular structure and cleanliness or what have you. And yet it's part of the whole, and we all seem to know that too. That the water in the ocean, it's said that the ocean is contained in the drop, and the drop is contained in the ocean. So you can lead to very quantum thinking if you don't look out. So to conclude, I want to discuss Dr. Emoto. Are you familiar with him? He's the genius who realized that water has consciousness. I would go a bit farther than that. I would say water is consciousness. Why else would we be talking about the 3 waves of volunteers? 3 waves of consciousness crashing over this beautiful earth of ours. Water is a consciousness. There's consciousness in air too. Oh boy, is that fun when that starts talking to you. And so yes, I yammer about feeling alone, and there are reasons for that, and they are very valid. But how alone can I be when I know, when I've seen and felt the air alive with its own essence, and the water talking to me. I don't know what sort of aha moment that Dr. Emoto might have had to lead him to a camera and drops of water, which he photographed prior to and after adding consciousness. You see, there's much here that is for the young ones to be talking about, not me. and I'll leave it to them. I'll just freeform a little bit. It's, I think, the young ones who are going to do more with water than I. Emoto would have a bunch of people gather around a polluted and dirty lake and pray. Hold consciousness that was harmless and loving and in alignment with the truth. He took pictures of these water molecules prior to the prayer treatment, I think is what he calls it, and after. And chaotic, rather almost sometimes viscerally ugly blobs with prayer and with thought. They look like snowflakes sometimes. It's astounding. And when a certain chant is chanted, water can assume the structure of the Sri Yantra, a very holy mandala. There is no accident there. So Emoto has done a lot of research, a lot of work. He's not with us. There's much I could discuss about that, but I will hold my tongue. Dr. Emoto led us to the truth, and so I will tell you of a little experiment he did, and actually I believe it was with rice, because he began to, get the clue, and then I want to show you how I bless my water, and do with it what you will. He had some grade schoolers for a month take 2 containers in their hands, one at a time, and say a word. On one container, it was passed around, were the words, "You fool." And so, I believe the children were instructed they didn't have to feel it, they just had to say it. And so, the box would go by, and one by one, the rice would hear, "You fool," and boop, it would go, sit on a shelf until the next day of abuse. The other box, "I adore you." I think that's what it was. "I love you," or "I adore you." Boop, 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 from kid to kid. Boop, sat on the shelf. 30-day treatment. What do you think happened? Want to guess? For those who know, I don't get to be clever with you. With the others who don't know, I will reveal my cleverness. No, this Dr. Emoto who knew. The rice in the container with the mean words was putrid and stinky and ugly and darkened, diseased. You could tell. Ugh, you wouldn't want to eat it. How do you think the other rice looked? I know you can guess, and I know you're right. It was healthy. Let that sink in, will you? Those little kids didn't have to hate the rice, they just had to say the words. I think that's why it bothers me when I hear women say, "I hate my legs." Because you say it 10 times a day. Well, guess what? Guess who hears that 10 times a day? The same little pegs that move you around from place to place. So, it's important what we say. And I'm learning that it's also important what remains unsaid. But that has been one tricky lesson for Mama. So, blessing my water. I learned this from... can't think of her name right now. Darn it. She speaks, she speaks the light language. Do things happen when I hear that? Like my body mimicking the language without knowing why. and feeling so giddy. I'll think of her name and apologize for not remembering right now. But she ran a recording about how to do blessing on your water, and I use it to this day because there's something about it that just rings really true and feels good when I do it. I know instinctively that my water is clear. There's this concern about water being impure and that we must use filters and spend great resource because our water is somehow wicked and dangerous. And I think that that's not the best way to think about water. I think instead, if you realize that what you drink can be altered by what you think about it and how you posture yourself toward it, then you can feel a little bit more sovereign and a little less victimized by what's going on in your reality. So, my water bottle is big right now. And freeform, and it doesn't really matter. There are no rules, but I put my finger in, and I like to go clockwise. I'm going to have to start working with counterclockwise and see what happens. Anyway, 3 times, as you're circling 3 times, thinking about how much you love your water and how this prayer is going to clear every impurity out of it, and it's going to be like mountain spring water and so refreshing. You say, Ya Tsinte Makoya Sa. Ya Tsinte Makoya Sa. Ya Tsinte Makoya Sa. It activates your water for several hours, but not indefinitely, because water is a living being. Ya Sinte Makoya Sa. That's what I learned. But before I learned that prayer, I was doing something else. And it's just as effective. In fact, I think it might even be more in its own way. Depends on how free you feel and how powerful you feel. There's really nothing wrong with turning on your tap and imagining that the water is glittering rainbow of light. And it's spiraling. So pretty. Like a vortex of wonder and enlivenment. And as it runs, you put your cup down to it, let it fill, and you drink it. And it tastes good. Do you have to language every single time? I will not let the fluoride affect me. No. Why not instead tell your body, when you encounter fluoride that's been added to any product, I would prefer it, and I want to, from this day forward, for you to neutralize that. Have it not harm me in any way, and get rid of what I don't need in a way that doesn't provide any sort of discomfort or illness to me. I think it's very uncomfortable for me to be thinking that human beings have an argument with their water. That's why what happened at Flint is, I think, so central to the issues at hand. Water is truly our staff of life. It is quite possible to live quite comfortably and normally just drinking water if you get to a certain place, but it's not anything that you should do unless you know that it's the only thing that makes sense, because you can't tolerate the idea of eating anymore. It's too dense. And then it gets to be that even juices are too dense. Far too dense. And water is, feels good. Like I've said, you can put a crystal in your water if you'd like. It helps to neutralize it. Set your intention, let anything happen that you want. So, I know I'm not doing the but that feels good too. It's a process. It's just a process, but I let them know you got to go lighter, and I got to have some fun with this. So it's a little bit longer than I'd expected, but it's a good first attempt, don't you think? All right, have a good night. One more, and I'm done. Good night.